So there's multiple levels of, power in terms of having a knowledge base with Growthable that enable them to be independent and unique and fully white labeled, but also fully up to date with everything that's happening in high level, right? Because as soon as something ships, we write an article for it, we send it across, and they can choose to include it or not.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the High Level Spotlight Sessions, where we showcase awesome marketers doing awesome marketing. Today, I'm excited to be joined by Ryan OConnor. He is the founder of Growthable, which is a customer success as a service for agencies. Ryan, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Chase. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to have you on. I think a lot of people are going to be excited to learn about what you guys have going on. I'm excited to learn a little bit more about your backstory. It sounds like the classic journey. So you had an agency. Do you still run your own agency? Tell me about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do have my own agency, still have my own agency, and it is a little bit of an interesting evolution in discovering high level. Was probably garden variety, in that I was using, 10, 20, 30 different tools in a stack that we'd stitched together with, Zapier tape. And, one day one of the partners kind of came and said, have we seen this? And so we and then sort of the light bulb went on, and we just, it was about all of 20 seconds later, we went all in. And, through doing so, we were able to, I suppose, develop what we thought was a good foundation of knowledge. And we got a lot out of being part of the communities, the official communities on Facebook and so forth. So we started to create, knowledge-based articles, and we post those knowledge-based articles on our website. So as a result of the knowledge-based articles, we started to be known for some, people in the community that had the answers to common problems with moving from predominantly services-based revenue in shifting into, what was, if not the majority of revenue was coming from software and the tools that you were giving out to the users, and how to make that transition was also a big thing that people were wondering. So as a result of that, we took those knowledge-based articles and we turned them into short form videos, and that then became the underpinnings of a very, very large course that we created recently, which went live about 2 or 3 months ago. And so then we thought, well, we've already got a team and we already have a course and we already have a knowledge base. So we kind of rolled all that together and we formed what is now our customer success as a service business. So it's essentially multiple parts, but the first part being 24/7 white label support for agencies. You never have to worry about supporting a customer ever again. And in its first instance, that's great. And if you looked at it just on the surface, you'd say, great, I never have to worry about support again. But what we then also do is we say, well, now that we're supporting your customers, because we're running this little piece of code on every single page, every time someone signs in, we know where they're signed in, we know which feature they're using. We're now, coming back and saying, it's really important that you understand, the user journey, right? So, when they first sign in, we run an onboarding session for them. It's part of our service. And then, as we kind of let them go, we let the data sort of tell a story and say, at the end of a month, you've got 100 sub accounts, this is where they spend the most time. These are the questions that they're asking, most frequently. And we really sort of feel like that the data and the intelligence that we gather is just as important, if not more critical, in the story that it tells about our customers, users, and the adoption of their platform, as is the ability to just, respond in a timely manner and serve them.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So you guys, I mean, I love what you're doing, because I think it's oftentimes the biggest fear of high levelers about SaaS mode is, well, I love the idea of it, but I'm not an expert on the platform. So I can't imagine what I would do when people start asking me questions and I have to support them.
Right.
So it's so cool that folks like you guys are supporting our customers in that way, in a white labeled manner where they can confidently just say, great, now I can just focus on sales and growing this thing and not have to worry about getting caught with a question that I don't know the answer to. But you mentioned what you guys are doing. So one, you mentioned that you do onboardings too, which I think is really interesting. And I'd love to know,
Yeah.
do you guys like it's when somebody comes to work with you, do you find that you're often teaching them like, hey, here's probably how you want to onboard somebody? Or are you just like, tell us how you want your customers onboarded?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think it is, ironically, it is a little bit of an education process, which is what we want the customer success experience to be.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, the reason I call it customer success as a service rather than tech support is because, you know, when we thought about what we wanted to do, we thought about there was there's an interview with Brian Chesky from Airbnb when he was building Airbnb that I remember, and he was thinking about, you know, do I do a 1-star experience or do a 5-star experience? And he ends up doing a thought experiment on what a 20-star experience would be. But anyway, if you think about it, a 5-star experience is if I'm an end user and I've got an issue, I jump on live chat, that person immediately knows exactly what my problem is. But rather than just solving the problem, they say, hey, do you want to jump on a Zoom? I'll show you how you can achieve this outcome so that you know how to do it next time. And before I leave, hey, did you know you could do this, this, and this, right? And you're really kind of giving them, you know, you're not only just solving their problem, you're setting their expectations that you've listened to them, you're going to solve the problem. You're also then showing them that you really know how to get the best out of what they're looking to achieve. So that's kind of a 5-star experience where we sort of feel like anything less than that would be, you know, considered to be kind of 1-star.
That's really cool. I mean, there's so many little features that people don't know about or think about or whatever. So I could imagine solving someone's problem and be like, oh, and by the way, did you know you can like save pre-written responses as templates? Like little things like that, I feel like would be amazing for, you know, as a way to like slowly teach the end user how to use more and more of the app.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that you know, that comes from a lot of us, you know, spending a lot of time as an agency running thousands of onboarding calls and knowing, you know, which components we think are going to, you know, make a big impact and make a big aha moment as we're explaining it. But certainly to answer your question earlier around, you know, do we feel that the agency owners get a sense of they're being educated by us when we give them what we want to do from an onboarding point of view? It's interesting because we have a like an SOP, and we say like, you know, here's our standard onboarding process, and they read it and they go, you know, that looks great, do that, right? But then when we actually get on the phone and you know, all the Zoom and we do it, there's so much peripheral context to each of those sections where you can say, you know, this is where you would put in the information for missed call text back, right? But then if you throw in 3 examples of why missed call text back is important, here's a scenario where missed call text back, you know, has saved someone from missing a lead. You know, in one extreme, it's a tow truck driver, and on a different extreme, it's a, you know, it's a large enterprise. You know, you use different examples and you walk through them. Hearing it in the context of it being used, hearing real world anecdotal evidence of how this feature fits in their world can make all the difference between whether they use it, i.e. adopt that feature, or not, right? And the whole point of onboarding is you're trying to get them to adopt that feature or service, right? So.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I could imagine that it makes, let's say I white label high level and I sign up for Growthable, but I only have 10 clients. I'm just getting started, right? But your team talking to my end users is probably saying things like, oh, we see tons of people use it like this. It makes me sound like I'm a huge company and I have tons of clients, right? Like I could see that being really beneficial to have people in there that are like, oh yeah, we see this all the time. Or like, oh no, you know, we see thousands of whatever's a month. And I would get really excited about that because it's like, yeah, you're making me sound like I'm way further ahead than I am and my clients are loving it.
Yeah, that's a great point. And not only that, you know, I think that you also, you're not invalidating queries that they've got, but if you're early on in the process, like let's say they've only just kind of signed up, a week ago, they're doing an onboarding session, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily 100% sold. And this, customer success's interaction with them is the first real interaction beyond sales and marketing, or maybe you didn't have sales and marketing, maybe it was a landing page, right? And they've just clicked sign up, right? So I have no idea if this is something that people have used other than read some testimonials, watched some videos. And so then to hear, right, like if I'm a dentist and I say, hang on, guys, like this is not how dental practices work. This is this, this, and this. And, basically at that point where you can say like, great, that's awesome. Like you're not the first dentist to ask that question. We've seen this before. And then what you do is you say, when they asked that question, we showed them this and they did this, right? And so immediately, you're giving them the social proof whilst validating their question, but then also saying like, you're not the first one to do this, you're not the guinea pig, you're not trialing this for the first time. And here's the real world examples and outcomes that someone else achieved.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, I can't even imagine the benefit it has to the end user. You just feel so more confident that you made a good decision, knowing that there's somebody right there behind the live chat whenever you need them. You also mentioned, which I thought was really cool, is that you guys are not there just closing chats, but you take that data and then feed it back to the agency, which is really cool. So I'm imagining you're telling me things like, hey, none of your customers are using the missed call text back. Like, are you not selling that to them? Why not? Is that the type of conversations you guys have?
Exactly. Yeah. So, and again, I mean, this comes back to the biggest point that we try to kind of make around what our brand sort of stands for is to not view customer success as an overhead or a cost center, in that we really kind of resonate with agencies that are moving in more of, they want to be more product led in their growth rather than services based. And, I think a lot of people move to high level because of those same reasons. So, they go kind of together. So to your point, a truly great customer success function, if we split it up into the different kind of areas of, especially specialization, I should say, you'd have kind of like, activation, onboarding, but then you got to look at things like retention, right? Growth, et cetera, et cetera. And so these are all post-sale areas of your customer's journey that are really important and that customer success is traditionally responsible for. And so, addressing their concerns just from a like reactive point of view, like I have this problem, can you fix it? Great. That's the support component. The success component is really about how do you ensure that if they've bought a plan that has reputation management, it has the CRM and opportunities, it has, Stripe payments, right? As part of the plan that they bought, are they going to feel like they're getting their money's worth because they've actually adopted and are using, those features and solutions and getting the outcomes that plan has, said, right? If the answer was no, how do you know the answer is no? Like, are you guessing that the answer is no? Or do you rely on, product usage information to say they bought the plan that includes Stripe payments, but they haven't integrated Stripe, right? And so, you don't need any sophisticated tracking technology to kind of find that information. But it's, the user behavior that indicates whether or not that person would be at risk, for instance, of downgrading from that plan to a lower plan because, they're not fully adopted into the feature that, that plan had. And so, we want to basically, because of our live chat, right? We just, we're sticking a little bit of JavaScript on there, and then that gives us the ability to track, user behavior in a private way. But be able to come back and say, well, tell us about the plans that, you've got, right? And they'll say, well, we've got, bronze, silver, gold. And you'll say, tell us about gold. And they'll say, blah, blah, blah. And we'll say, cool. Like any good customer success function would, they'll say, the people on our gold plan don't use the thing that is the highlight of, the gold plan, right? And so there's a gap there that, needs to be kind of solved for. And it indicates people that potentially are at risk of downgrading or churning. And it does tell a story about what's happening with your existing customer base that without that data, you're otherwise basically guessing.
That's really interesting. It'd be awesome if you guys could build like injectable banners or something, because then it's like, do you want us to like notify them about Stripe Connect or whatever and tell them to like come chat with us so that we could set it up? Like start I'm hearing this like, well, can you just start talking to my customers like in my account, telling them what to do? That would be
well, it's interesting
cool.
you say that, Chase, because we do have guided tours. Right.
Cool.
So yeah, we have essentially we have the ability for people to create their own version of a guided tour. So we have our kind of universal one. So if you clicked on, say, reputation management, you would get a nice little, animated person saying, this is reputation management. Would you like a tour? And it'll go through and it'll highlight the different sections. And in addition to that, you could then take that and kind of make it your own version of it, right? So if you wanted it to be more growth focused and sort of upselling focused, then of course that would be something that customers could do. But it is actually part of our product that we have, these things called checklists, which are very persistent. It's designed to really kind of just sit in their face, right? I like to think of it as kind of the modern paperclip for Microsoft Word. That just doesn't go away until you do the thing, even though you've closed it 150 times.
I was thinking of Clippy too when you started talking about it.
Yeah, and it's like, hey, do you know that you could use reputation management? And you're like, go away.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I mean, I'd love to get some. You guys, I feel like are really the feet on the street. What do you see from the end users like that they get most excited about, or that they light up about, or get tripped up on the most? Like what are some insights that you could share with us, having worked directly with so many of the end users?
Yeah, it's really interesting to see, first and foremost, it's so interesting to see the niches or niche, I don't know how to pronounce, but for US, but we have everything from fitness, which I think is pretty classic, right?
Yeah.
But customers that are running music schools where there's just music teachers doing virtual lessons all over the world, right? So, like high levels facilitating like the next, generation of, bass guitarists, right? Like it's incredible to see. And I think that like, what's really cool to see is like these use cases, you could never imagine the use cases. And so a couple of interesting things is that I feel like it's, no matter what, there's like a Pareto 80-20 rule applied universally. Like 80% of the queries from your install base are coming from 20% of the people, right? Sure. And because once we know someone's name, it's kind of like a sticky contact, like we know who they are. So next time they come in, we go, that's John, right? And it's usually the same.
Here's folks, John, right? Again.
Yeah. And so, it's mostly, look, most of the queries come from, understanding workflows better. And people, agency owners generally are applying snapshots through SaaS, right? So, they purchase, gold plan snapshot comes down, pre-made workflows. And of course, as a, let's just use the music school, for instance, the bass guitar teacher, he knows nothing about workflows, right? And so, why am I getting this confirmation message twice? Why is this appointment over here, set to confirmed and not, this, and that, and the other? But, so that's kind of more of the qualitative, I suppose, but on the quant, the most used areas, certainly the funnel builder and the workflows, right? So piecing those two things together, putting in, user journeys, I'm guessing, things like landing pages, those types of things. That's by far, it's certainly where people spend the most time, but I'm guessing that's because it's, there's a visual design component to it and those types of things. people also, spend a lot of time using, let's say the reputation management, if that's part of it. And I'm guessing that that's probably as a result of, if you're a small business and it's your business, that's really, it's kind of your best reviews are on show, but also, your skeletons are out there in the closet right in front of you, and you kind of want to go and address them and deal with them. And so you probably spend a lot of time going, how can I fix that negative sentiment that's coming up on my dashboard, that type of stuff. And so that's interestingly a really like heavily used feature as well.
Do people ever chat you because they're happy, or is it always them being frustrated trying to figure something out?
It's pretty neutral, right? Like, we don't see a lot of negativity. It's mostly just, this, hey, this is not working. People are pretty friendly. And I think, that's also part of trying to build the rapport and the relationships that we have. We know their name before they hit the chat. So we know it's going to be, Johnny from this sub account. And, it usually starts off with like, hi again, right? Because it's, probably the fifth or sixth time that we've spoken to them. But yeah, no, we don't see a lot of negativity, because I think that the impact the solutions are making is large enough so that teething issues and things like that aren't, cause to make them super upset. Probably the most interesting is where we have gyms, and it's like, 5 a.m. in the morning. They're obviously kind of getting up, running, early classes and things like that. And they're just, 5 a.m. there's just like all these gyms, right? Just like going crazy. And so that's like a really interesting kind of like, time where we have a lot of like people coming at us. But yeah, no, they're usually pretty happy with what they're getting. So yeah.
Do you see like a lot of accounts where you're just like, wow, that business is crushing it?
Yeah, just brought one on this week that blew me away. And I found that I thought, the community for instance, like the community on Facebook is really big, and I stay close to updates with the awards and things like that from summits and SaaSpreneur masterminds and so on. And you see people getting invited to come on stage if you've got 100 sub accounts and this, that, and the other. And then boom, you'll speak to someone and you go, how many sub accounts? 270. And you go, oh my God, right? Like, like I didn't even know that you existed, right? You're very quiet, right? They're just over in the corner crushing it, right? They know everyone, but they're just not the vocal kind of outspoken.
Yeah, there are lots of SaaSpreneurs like that. That kind of want to remain they're happy to remain in the shadows. Do you see any, like, can you give any tips as far as niches? I feel like a lot of people get hung up trying to figure out what niche they're going to go for. Do you see ones that, like when you mentioned gym, obviously that's tried and true, but like any other ones that are out of the ordinary that you think are really great?
Tattoo shops.
I have always said tattoo removal would be amazing with high level, because it's just all about reminding people to come back for the next session.
Yeah. I mean, it was just, yesterday we built this really interesting snapshot for a customer who runs tattoo businesses. And it was just about they're pretty large average contract values with regards to the tattoo consumer. And so the unit economics and they're quite interesting, right? And how to basically, we wanted the snapshot to say, like, if someone cancels their appointment with me, I want to go back out to people that are on the wait list, but I want to deprioritize my low value and I want to high prioritize my high value, do a round robin until my high value ones accept. And if no one accepts, go to the B list and say there's a slot available, and it kind of that scaled approach to it.
That's pretty interesting. And did you guys get that working?
We feel like it is there. Yeah. It's kind of glued together with tags and things like that. and just, yesterday we had the class calendar came out, and we thought maybe that could make an impact for us, but it's not 100% there. But yeah, in basically does work. So you can imagine, basically all the tattoo artist needs to do is just know who's on a wait list, and they just mark them and say wait list, wait list, wait list. And if they're really like super high value, they just tell them that there's that, and it'll go out and say like, hey, here's my A list. The 10 o'clock's canceled. Do you want it? And then it drops out to the B list if nobody books, which is kind of cool.
That's so cool. I mean, I love hearing about stuff like this, because you could imagine building a whole business off that one workflow, right? Just going to tattoo artists, the pain that they have, and you're like, guess what I can do? Yeah. Sucks when someone cancels their appointment, right? And it's like, it's like, check this out. And you can just go to every tattoo shop.
And and I feel like that's the biggest difference between, and like it's such a big topic to talk about, and some of, what we do, but the difference between having industry knowledge or domain expertise and just purely like, I feel like I know high level pretty well, but I've never run a tattoo shop before. And then as soon as you kind of merge, me with that person, we can make some kind of cool magic happen, right? Because they say like in tattoo world, this is what you really want to do. And you go, mind blown. I know how to do that. Off you go, great. And it brings me to a point which is, something else. I feel like this is unique to us. I don't want to make the claim. It's something that took us a long time to solve, which was the problem that high levels created for themselves by allowing white labeling, is that no end user really wants to ever know that it's high level, right? And so high level themselves have a huge challenge in being able to support them. So hence, coming up with support companies in the ecosystem around it. But then when you look at knowledge base, right? Everybody really, goes to a lot of effort to try to make the user experience seem as far from the standard, high level user experience.
Right.
Which means if I want to suggest someone, I'm in the middle of a conversation, I'm like, I've got a knowledge base article on exactly how you do that, right? If that then goes to the standard high level support center, you're immediately giving away, right, that the architecture is high level, right? So how do you solve for that? One, you have a knowledge base, but the knowledge base needs to be written in a way that it's vanilla and generic, and it doesn't use the word high level, it uses the word system, CRM, platform. And then in addition to that, we give our customers a unique version of that they can maintain themselves. But if high level, Sean's going to do 5 common atches this week, and we go write the articles, and it actually propagates to our customers' knowledge base, even though it's independently owned and run by them. And then they basically say, yes, I want that included in my knowledge base. And they can also say, I want my sub account users, I want my community can contribute articles as well.
Cool.
And they can also say, if someone searches in the knowledge base, they can pick which articles are included in the search results. So there's multiple levels of, power in terms of having a knowledge base with Growthable that enable them to be independent and unique and fully white labeled, but also fully up to date with everything that's happening in high level, right? Because as soon as something ships, we write an article for it, we send it across, and they can choose to include it or not.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think it's really important, right? Because I could see if I'm selling a really streamlined package, right, that's basically just that one workflow and whatever, I don't want my clients seeing help docs about like, courses or whatever, because then they're going to start asking me, and then it's like, well, I don't want to sell courses, but now they're, I kind of have to. So that's really cool that you can pick and choose, so they're not, getting distracted with things that you don't want them knowing about or worrying about.
Yeah. And I definitely see this a lot, which is the more locked down and the more, the blinkers, you need to force the blinkers on to the customers, like the better that they are performing, right? So the agencies that I see where they're just giving the kitchen sink immediately is where you see the least amount of adoption, right? Or you see low levels of adoption broadly,
Mhm.
Whereas if you had just sold 2 or 3 things, you would see extremely high levels of adoption in just those few things, right?
Yeah.
So you could
We're gonna
argue that one is way better than another. Yeah.
we're gonna continually make that, like, I'm excited for us to get more granular with permissions so that you can do more of that, like really hone in the app on exactly the experience that you want them to see and feel or whatever. Um, but yeah, totally. I think that's a great tip, right? In my mind, I don't understand why I would ever want my clients going into workflows, you know? So like,
Right.
I don't think I would enable that for any of my customers because that's just a recipe for disaster, to be honest. They
Yeah.
should just come to me if they want something to happen, and you know, we would build the workflow on the back end for them. What about AI? Are you guys toying with AI? I mean, I feel like you're crazy if you're not, right? So are you seeing fun opportunities of things that you're going to be able to do with AI?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Really, I mean, the support piece of it, um,
Have you seen people asking about it in your chats yet? I mean, it just rolled out across the app
yeah,
like a couple of days ago. I'm curious to
yes.
see if people are, yeah.
Yeah, so as part of our onboarding now, if we're showing someone, for instance, like social media posting, right? Like there's a button right there which says AI writer, right?
Mhm.
Some of our agencies already have like a custom menu link dedicated to it, and they have it's like a third party something or other.
Gotcha.
Um, so it's definitely at the top of the hype cycle, right?
Yeah.
Um, as far as it, I think that the opportunities that it creates for agencies is huge, right? And I love that high level is baking it in to so many elements. Like if you had to just put it in social media posting and left it there, you kind of would have went, oh, that makes sense. But you didn't, you went and
Mhm.
put it in funnels and, different areas where it really is the personal assistant kind of sitting there, and it's like one less person you have to hire, right?
Mhm.
One less person you have to rely on because you're just kind of sitting there. And yeah, I think it provides amazing user experience. I think you guys did a really good job. I haven't seen a lot of people ask questions about it. I think it's pretty recent. um, but everybody loves the fact that they don't have to think for themselves, and they can kind of just let the machine do it all for them.
Well,
So
it's going to be interesting for you guys because I imagine you're going to start getting questions around
yeah.
prompts, right? Like, how do
Yeah.
I make it? I'm trying to make it give me, like, the image generator stuff is wild to me. I can't wait until that rolls out because I think for social media, it's potentially massive, right? Like, if you can
Yeah.
just, you know, I think about like clients that we've worked on back at the agency that I used to run in, like, you know, HVAC or something, and how hard it was to find the image that you wish you could find, right? Of the plumber getting splashed by a leaky whatever. And now you can just tell it, and you'll have 6 of them that you can pick from. But you have to really, in my limited experience with AI, it's really all about figuring out the ways to tell it to do stuff, right? And so I could see the end users kind of being like, trying to get a picture of a plumber here, and
Yeah.
all I'm getting back are, you know, whatever. You
Yeah.
guys are going
Yeah.
to start fielding those chats of like, be more specific, tell it you want a
Yeah. Yeah.
photorealistic picture, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't seen a lot of that come through. I'm sure it will. I feel like, again, like it's interesting, like it's the way that sort of we define customer success, right? Is again, it's heavily based on this premise of being product led in the company's growth, right? Meaning basically that you don't need a sales team, you don't need
Mhm.
um, someone to be involved in the process of selling, but you know, God, I wish I was I don't do a lot of it these days, but God, I wish I was doing demonstrations of the platform, because you can just see that, like, if I was, last week I was demoing, here's a social media tool, right? And here's how you can pull up a calendar and you can schedule a bunch of posts like 30, 60 days in advance. You're waiting for the question to come up. but could we use like some sort of AI? And you're like, I'm glad you asked. Click, right? And off you go. And like, they're like, I'll buy it, right? Like it's if you're doing any sort of demonstration or sales process with regards to using high level, I mean, you're in dreamland right now because, you can just tick all the boxes, you can kick all the goals, right? It's just cool.
Is that something that you guys have helped out or are willing to help people out with? Like for me, I get hit with what I feel like are impossible questions, right? And they're like, when are we going to have a white labeled demo of high level? And it's
Right.
like, well, demo of what? Like, which of the million things would you want the demo to be about? You know what I mean? So like, I feel like people have high levelers often have like writer's block or whatever when it comes to creating sales resources for themselves.
Yeah.
You guys help like, hey, here's actually a really common demo that we see a lot of people use. Do you want us to build it out for you so that you could, you know what I mean, show it off?
So we have for lack of a better word, university, which is just we built a really big course which covered everything, including the things that you're talking about.
Mm.
And that included a whole bunch of stuff around client acquisition strategies, including sales methodologies.
Cool.
And we spun that out into, if you want to know how to sell the thing, like here's some ideas, right? But certainly I would say it's very rare that someone takes, even when we do onboarding, it takes 60 minutes just to touch every button, right? Let alone give context as to why you would use that button, the outcomes of clicking those buttons, and real world examples, anecdotal evidence, et cetera, right? You're easily topping out at 90 minutes. But what we do is we say, well, here's how we think you should sell. And, here's client acquisition strategies in terms of how you present in a sales process, something like reputation management. And it's usually around, we bring in things like, what is the macro effect that drives the importance of reputation management, and then look at the micro and their own organization, and then blend those two things together to drive the need for the solution and have it very interactive. It's contextual because it's their data they're seeing during the presentation and so on and so forth. And kind of that's how we train and educate people from a sales process point of view. But certainly, to answer your question, you can't just grab vanilla demo of high level, because I just don't think that one exists, right? And it wouldn't. It would only prompt you to cause, a level of confusion in the customer's mind rather than any sort of like,
where I go, because most people when they make their demos, it's like a feature tour. Right. And it's like that's you're going to confuse everyone. You're going to lose them. They don't get, like, your demos should be more about the outcomes and oh, by the way, it's this thing over here that actually does that in the background, but you don't really need to know that. What you need to know is that you're going to be having conversations pop in here and you need to, answer them as fast as possible. I'm curious though. I love these conversations. If you were going to sell high level today to a business, what outcome or feature set that causes that outcome would you lead with? Is it reputation management?
So, that's an interesting question because, I do, right? But, so with our own agency, but our agency is not a small business focused, right? So, our agency is, very large membership based organizations. And so this is, not-for-profits, associations, where the member data is known and rich, right? Which gives you lots of potential with regards to engagement, right? And so we're an engagement platform because we can do all sorts of really cool multi-channel engagement through workflows, and we never touch reputation management. In fact, it's deleted through CSS off of the menu, right?
That's cool. We're in the process of launching a new challenge, a 5-day challenge. And so we had to have this conversation of like, okay, it's got to be stupid simple. Like, let's teach people how to sell high level with one thing, one feature or whatever. And so we boiled it down to the missed call text back. And because I was like, you can make a really strong argument that if you miss 2 sales a week due to missed calls, for what pretty much any business, that's going to be hundreds of dollars. So there you
Yeah.
go. Like our software just made you a couple $100 off of one feature.
Yeah.
So we'll see how it goes. But my hope
Yeah.
is that, yeah, the missed call text back is enough to get people going, well, wow, I'm
Yeah.
getting clients at $300 a month and I'm just selling them basically one thing.
So if you ran a challenge and you said, go and get the most customers you can in a week with selling just one feature, I would go to tow truck drivers and I would sell missed call text back, right? Because the tow truck driver, the urgency in which they're needed is clear. If I'm stuck on the side of the road and I'm a consumer and I need a tow truck, I look Google up and I find AAA tow trucks. I call them. If you don't pick up, I'm going to the next number.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think it's a pretty clear value proposition to the person that owns that tow truck. If they're an independent business owner, everything relies on them picking that call up, right? And so things happen. You're a human. You could be in hospital. You could be, on holiday. I don't know. But if I can guarantee you that you'll never miss that call, and we have a bunch of options in diverting, to a voicemail, replying back to an SMS, et cetera, et cetera. And instead of coming back to a missed call with an unknown number, you're coming back to a conversation.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be something that you would love? Yes, of course. And then 2 days later, I would come in and say, how's it going? And they're like, great, I don't miss any calls. I've got a whole bunch of things. Say, now I want to talk to you about how we can automate the follow-up and capture their information. Where are you located? This and that and the other. You could probably create a Zap to send a webhook to Google Maps to find exactly the location of where they're at. Come back 3 days later. Now, right? As soon as you've dropped the car off, ask for reputation management and grow from there. Do you know what I mean? And so you layer in all the things that you do, but you only started with missed call text back and the urgency of that business.
Yeah, that's 100% where our collective heads are at. And the other really cool thing that I loved about starting with the missed call text back is we're going to teach people to look for businesses that have already claimed their Google business profile so that you're not going to have to struggle with that, making the connection. And then you don't even have to worry about their website, right? If it's a business has been in business, they're getting enough traffic to their GMB, they're getting enough calls from their Google business profile, let it run from there. But the cool thing is, as soon as you do that, it also turns on Google Chat. So now not only they're getting the missed calls saved, but they're getting new conversations and they're like, what's going on here? And you're like, oh, you like that? Like we turned that on too. We thought you'd love it or whatever. And now you're like surprised and delighting people, even though again, it's still you only set up one thing, but you're getting the benefit of a couple of things and then reviews start coming in. Like my reviews are coming in here too. And it's like, yep, you can reply to them right there. So it's kind of like a 3-in-1 if you lead with the missed call text back.
100% agree with you. And we always advise that if, for our agencies, if they are going with our onboarding, we have a specific set of steps, and integrating GMB, the Google My Business Profile. We sort of say that the Launchpad has those steps in that order for a reason. It felt deliberate to me that the mobile app is one of the very first things that an end user adopts. Yeah. Psychologically, because before any interaction happens conversationally, if you've got the mobile app installed on your mobile device, the push notification gives the customer that dopamine hit that I've got this thing and it's working. And the attribution to that goes directly back to you, the agency. So for me, it's kind of like, you just got to get that mobile app installed as fast as you can, right? And then
statistically, it wasn't too long ago, we did a presentation and the team came back with this stat. I forget exactly what it is, but statistically, getting your client to download the mobile app correlates to retention higher than anything else. It's like the number one thing that you can do is just get your clients to download the mobile app. They end up getting more contacts in the system. They end up staying for longer. It's like any way you slice it. And I was like, wow, I mean, it makes a ton of sense, but it's cool to have the stat there now to prove it.
Yeah. And I like, in addition to that, Chase, like I get surprised and delighted myself, right? Like, because we have a business, it's Growthable. On Facebook, it's Growthable. We don't do any promotion, right? Everything's kind of word of mouth for us. But just the other day, someone messaged us on Facebook, right? We don't get Facebook messages, and it came through the app, right? And you're like, oh, it's Facebook, right? And you're like, I'm just going to reply using Lead Connector because I've got it right here. Why would I sign into anything else, right? So yeah, it's awesome. Like I can just see, I mean, as soon as you connect those systems, the stress drains out of the customer's face, knowing that they don't have to go back to Instagram DMs, they don't have to go back to Facebook, they don't have to go back to these third-party systems that has been fragmented and, you know, separated for so long. No longer am I hopping from app to app. Now I'm just in this one little nice place, and I'm going to stay here. It's nice and cozy.
I love having these conversations, and I'm so happy to hear you say these things, because I feel like young people just signing up with High Level are often kind of really skeptical. Like, do people really love this? Like, is it, you know what I mean? And when you work in the accounts and you get to see the people using it every day, it's, you know, like I have it set up for my friend's restaurant. And so they use the calendar for the reservations, and then they do the reminders or whatever. And just all day long, people are texting like, oh, we're running 10 minutes late. Is that okay? And, you know, the person that they have manning them is an older guy who's not technically savvy, but he loves it. And so it's just fun to see and to talk to people who get to see all the action and how cool, like the value that it actually drives every day for all these businesses.
Oh, I mean, you know, like when we started doing big software enterprise sales teams, right? So, you know, that is a far cry from a restaurant doing bookings and, you know, reputation management. You're talking, you know, billion-dollar revenues, you know, companies with sales teams in the hundreds, shifting from HubSpot to High Level, strapping on headsets and using the power dialer and looking at the leaderboard and going like, I'm booking more demos than you, right? And like, you know, that was, for me, it was just the most awesome thing, right? Because I was like, this is competing with, you know, like some really like big, you know, CRM-y type things. And then, you know, later this year, you know, we replaced Salesforce Marketing Cloud with High Level in big engineering firm. And, you know, they ripped out this, you know, $1 million, you know, module for Salesforce and put High Level in, right? And it's like, because, you know, the workflow is unbelievably powerful. For me, you know, I mean, I go in there and I say that we are business process automation specialists, right? And they say, show me, and you just do a demonstration of workflows. And you're like, if this happens, then I can do this. And they're like, well, what about this? And you're like, literally anything. Right. And they're just, right. So, you know, it's unbelievable. And you start with one department in that organization, and they tell 5 people that are running other departments. And sooner or later, I mean, you're touching almost every aspect of that organization. It's not just sales and marketing, right? It's you know, customer experience, right? And all sorts of stuff, any engagement, right? Across multiple channels. You know, the list goes on. So
it's so much fun. And I mean, the stuff that's going to roll out this year, like things for the social media planner that are just going to make it like so awesome. It's really exciting. So let me ask you a fun question. If you could be Sean for a day and wave the magic wand and say, okay, we're doing this next, or we're, you know, building this thing next, or doing whatever, what would it be?
God, it's like asking me what my favorite food is or something. Probably because of my background in the B2B space, I would go and build a bunch of sales forecasting, AI type things, right? That's all about kind of revenue teams and enabling revenue teams. And I know that's really boring and not sexy. But when you do get to this sophistication where, you can look at a pipeline, you can look at the predictability of a pipeline, the weighted averages, when they're going to close Q1, Q2, if they're, if they're likely to close versus not likely to close, et cetera, then you don't need HubSpot in the world anymore. You don't need Salesforce in the world anymore. You just need high level. And I kind of feel like that, is inevitable. And I'm excited for when we do eventually get there.
Interesting.
And it was interesting because of my own journey, coming from, like using different CRMs like HubSpot and whatever. Even in my own head, I was doing my own deals and my forecasting for so long, even though I was using high level, I was selling high level, still using HubSpot. And it's only in the last 12 months where I was like, I don't need this, right? And you make it work. So yeah, just I kind of
that's really interesting. I mean, you brought up a good point. Those types of organizations that are using Salesforce or HubSpot pay a fortune for it, right? So that's an interesting opportunity for people looking for niches and whatnot. I can see rolling into a Salesforce business and saying, hey, are you using this and this and this? And if the answer is no, like my solution does everything else and more, you know what I mean? And it's literally going to save you like tens of thousands of dollars, if not more. That would be a no-brainer situation.
Well, I think you said to me, you saw there was a video buried somewhere in an old YouTube account that I had, which was about doing real-time weather, right? And
oh yeah, that was cool.
So the reason that we did that was because Airbnb APAC used to be a customer, and they would say, we need to reach out to people that own caravan parks. They're the manager of is that what you call a trailer park, caravan park, right? And we need to encourage them to, revamp their listings or be listed, right, as hosts on our platform. And we can't do it in an efficient manner, right? And so we went in there and said, any API endpoint can be a trigger for reaching out to someone, right? So we were like, if let's say, in San Francisco, flights have dropped below $100 one way, and the weather is, I don't know Fahrenheit, but let's say the weather is fine and sunny. Let's just use a generic term, and right, something else. If those three things evaluate to true, send everybody in that area a thing saying like, conditions are optimal for you to be a host. You're going to get a lot of, tourists coming through next week. Go and update the photos, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what we did for Airbnb for a long time using high level. So
no way. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Wow. That's so cool to hear. Yeah. That demo was really cool. And it got me thinking about all the interesting things that you could do around the weather or whatnot, really interesting stuff. And yeah, now with inbound webhooks, like all of that stuff is getting even easier.
Inbound webhooks for me is magical. Yes. Yeah.
Well, I feel like we could nerd out forever, but I do want to give you the opportunity to let everybody know, what you guys have. I have to ask you, because I'm sure those that are watching are wondering, what does it cost to have you guys run white label chat support?
Yeah, so we have two plans. Thanks for asking. The first is for the entry-level agencies that don't have a lot of sub accounts or don't have a need for a very one-on-one personalized service. It's $99 a month. You get a chat widget on your website, and we'll talk to people. The difference there is so we have a gray label like Lead Connector. We just have a support chat widget. Then we have a plan for $297. At $297, it's 100% white labels. It's their brand. We're representing their brand. We're remotely accessing their systems. We're offering to jump on Zooms with their end customers. We're onboarding them. We have help centers, and we have all our education content, which is our university, which is a bunch of courses they can take. and reporting, analytics, behavioral data, usage, etc. That's 100% included in the 297. So there's no additional cost for onboarding or anything like that. It's just one fee per month.
Wow, that's fantastic. So growthable.io, right?
That's right. Yeah. Growthable.io. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for coming on. Like I said, I wish we could nerd out forever. But we did just hit the hour mark. Thank you for what you guys are doing. I mean, to me, it's super important to have folks like you in the community supporting other high levelers. And like I said, you know, hooking up with somebody like Ryan and what they're doing, it really frees you up to just focus on growth, right? You don't have to worry about the scary side of like dealing with people asking questions on how to figure stuff out. So I feel like it's kind of like a superpower.
100%. I agree.
Thanks for coming on, Ryan.
Thanks so much, Chase. Appreciate it.
Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next one.